The 2000s had to be one of the strangest times for fads and crazes. However, it was also a great time for gamers, with non-stop innovative games being churned out by the machine of the gaming industry. The SSX series were at the peak of hype with consumers, arcade-style extreme sports games were king, and innovative games such as the Skate series introduced a level of realism never seen before. And during all this, Just Steep It absolutely sucked at snowboarding. But amidst all this, a gem of a game was buried through all of the hype. For Rise Republic and before Steep, Ubisoft crafted a winter sport game which I'd best describe as the spiritual predecessor to both of those titles, and that game was SHAUN WHITE Snowboarding. Released in 2008, this game followed a player character being spotted by SHAUN WHITE himself and ultimately given a chance to prove themselves as the next potential top snowboarder. The reception at the time was not great, as most consumers were still riding the wave that was the SSX series, and expectations was that snowboard games would be wacky and over-the-top, high-paced during that time period. SHAUN WHITE Snowboarding was steep, but before steep was even a little twinkle in a game dev's eyes. It tried combining some elements of realism with over-the-top gameplay and story. Looking back from that viewpoint of a snowboarder in 2021, the game ambition was ahead of its time. A full-on, freestyle-orientated snowboard game with completely open mountains that you could explore at your own pace, or even take a part in a number of freestyle competitions, races, and scavenger hunts. So, let's break down why this game, in some aspects, is better than Steep. A stacked lineup of well-known snowboard sponsors were licensed and featured in this game. Burton being the long-time sponsor of SHAUN WHITE's outerwear and equipment meant the game obviously had a ton of the Burton catalogue. But the big boy winter sponsors of the 90s 2000s, and Nitro Snowboards, Capita Snowboards and the late Forum Snowboards had a great selection as well. Binding customizations were included, featuring union bindings, which is a rare sight indeed. The outerwear options featured catalogues of the time from some of the already named sponsors, along with the classic Special Blend and Foursquare brands. Topping off this already stacked lineup, actual goggle brands with real models were supplied by Oakley, Anon and Spy. And although this is a bit of a meme, yes, you could in fact wear and remove branded backpacks. Overall, this customization is much superior to what we have in 2016 release Steep. You could craft a truly unique snowboarder, and personally, back when I used to play this, I used to try and copy my in real life outfits. SHAUN WHITE featured 4 base mountains along with 2 others that came as DLC, which unfortunately I can't showcase as they can no longer be purchased. The 4 base mountains being Park City, Europe, Japan and Alaska, all were open world mountains which you could explore in your own way, and they all felt insanely unique. Park City, as the name suggests, is heavily based off a Northern American style resort that is full to the brim with features and parks. The Europe mountain is modelled off your classic Alp style resort with chalets dotted all over the mountain. Japan is a POW heavy with unique architecture that you do see in the Japanese resorts. And finally, Alaska is just one massive backcountry mountain, utilising a lot of natural features for the player to use. Each mountain was well crafted in its own manner, and the freestyle features are what you could only dream would be available in Steep. Brands even had their own competitions in-game and had their theming slapped everywhere. Button. So could you pick up this game and just start sending it massive, grinding every feature in sight? Unfortunately, that's a big fat nope. This game was harsh to newcomers and it put off so many people. This was mainly due to the equipment stat system. You start off with some of the most basic equipment, which quite simply makes you rage and squeal. This poor performing board makes the snowboard feel like you've got a log strapped to your feet. It barely turns, it barely pops, and spins at the speed of a snail. It can put off any dedicated gamer or winter enthusiast. However, saving your moolah, getting better equipment changes the game entirely, and it becomes reminiscent of what we're used to in Steep. Rotations are controlled via the left stick only, and interestingly, they've opted for a free axis control system, which means you can do almost any flip or rotation that you intend. However, there is a limitation on flips and spins to some degree, as this was a game that was released 2 years before the first ever triple was landed on a snowboard, and around 4 or 5 years before they became the standard in competitions. So you find that the dub corks are deemed some of the hardest tricks as they were standard of the time. Rails actually had their own system where a balance bar would appear when you connect with the rail. Interestingly, they implemented a mechanic which meant the bar would automatically start tilting to the direction you were traveling. So you'd have to immediately counteract this movement with a left stick. There's a lot of love and hate for this kind of mini-game-esque feature, as some people just prefer your standard automatic rails compared to this added level of difficulty. Trick grabs were controlled with the right stick, but there is no grab button. You just simply point the stick in a direction and the grab would initiate. Pressing the jump button whilst pointing would then form a tweaked version of the grab. Shifties were done by holding L2 down and then pointing the right stick left or right. Actual flatland butters were possible, allowing presses in any direction and any rotation. Interestingly, they also added something called focus mode. This mode introduced the over-the-top mechanics that were popular of that time period, allowing you to gain warp-like speeds, gain higher air than the Apollo 11, and some sort of super strength to allow you to break into secret areas. Combining this with the previously described limitations on flips and spins allowed you to break these barriers, albeit it looked a bit wild. What I loved about this game were the little things that made it feel truly alive and added that extra bit of immersion. There were tons of NPCs just shredding about and making comments as they pass, and there's even this option of throwing snowballs at them. You could also do this against other players in online lobbies of up to 16 people at a time. Chairlifts were one of the most requested features in Steep, and this game actually had loads of moving ones that you can physically sit on. You could sit on them, chill on them, take in the surroundings, and look for potential cool spots, and even jump off during the chairlift. Minor things such as animations for actually strapping in and out of your board just adds that extra bit of immersion, something that Steep dearly missed in my opinion. One of the best features in this game was how the events were delivered. The game's events would include other NPC riders with cool cinematics and proper award ceremonies. It actually felt like you were in a real competition. And if you were playing this online, you'd line up with the lobby and watch each other do a run in real time, which adds so much pressure. I genuinely believe this would be an absolutely sick feature in a modern winter sport game. You could make a proper live competition out of it. Another massive feature which I've seen heavily requested since day one of Steep is Avalanches. People want to feel the thrill of outrunning an avalanche on a snowboard or skis, and well, believe it or not, this game does it quite well. Certain areas have loose snow, and carving on it would set off an avalanche in which you would have to outrun. It's actually a really fun feature, and you can get quite cool clips and cinematics of your snowboarder just barely outrunning the avalanche. Overall, this game is one of my all-time favourites for the time period it was released in. I loved the SSX series and the arcade-style competitors, but I had a real itch for something that was closer to real life. This game was arguably the first true semi-realistic snowboarding game with an open, do-whatever-you-want world. Sure, the first few hours were absolute torture, but once over that hurdle, it became much more enjoyable. It's a shame it can't be played properly on Windows 10 any longer without using an emulator, but if you do have a PS2, a PS3 or a 360 and have an avid interest in winter sports games, then I'd seriously suggest giving it a go. If you guys enjoyed the look of this game, then please follow me on Twitch as I'll be streaming it so viewers can ask questions or request to see features that I didn't get to cover in this video. And finally, any likes and hitting the subscribe button really helps. Thank you for watching and catch you guys soon.